Hello and welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today I will be covering UFO sightings and alien encounters in the state of Virginia. Shout out to subscriber Leonard Bakers for requesting it. Before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, as it really helps my channel out and I really appreciate it. If you want to check out more of my paranormal videos, you can click the pop-up on the top right corner for a full playlist. And if you have your own paranormal encounters, UFO sightings, or any other kind of strange story, you can either share it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/IHaveASpookyStory, or send it to my story submission email, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. So, with all that out of the way, let's dive into it. Unidentified objects seen in Virginia. From the Northern Virginia Sun, January 25th, 1965. Unidentified flying objects, UFOs, from shiny inverted ice cream cones to zooming orange balls of light, have been plaguing Virginia's sides for the past several days. Yesterday evening, 5 Virginia Tech students reported a new one near Salem, an oblong shape with 3 yellow lights and 1 green light. This UFO hovered about 400 feet above the ground and kept pace with the students' car for some distance down a darkened highway. In Richmond, a radio newsman and his wife reported an orange ball of light streaking across the sky. The light blinked out on the horizon. It flew a straight path. At least 8 other persons reported seeing the same thing. 2 men driving near Williamsburg in separate cars told police they spotted a UFO near a highway intersection. It was described as tall, aluminum-coated, and shaped like an inverted ice cream cone. It hovered 75 feet above the ground. Both men said their car engines died during the few seconds the UFO was in view, but the car started up again as soon as the object was out of sight. In Verona, a couple reported a bright yellow light that hovered overhead for about 5 minutes before heading towards Stoughton. 3 Buchanan County youngsters reported a circular UFO with 3 lighted ridges on its sides. And in Augusta County, a man reported that 3 men, 36 inches tall, got out of 2 flying saucers, walked around a bit, then hopped back inside their vehicles and sped off. Unidentified object sightings continue. From the Northern Virginia Sun, January 26, 1965. The radar tower at Richmond's Bird Field tagged a couple of unidentified flying object sightings in Virginia yesterday as a plane with a new arc light and 2 military helicopters. Both the radar men didn't have an explanation for bent treetops and a small fire atop a mountain near Marion, where a UFO was spotted hovering by a score of residents. The tower said it had picked up on its scopes a private plane on a proper flying pattern near Richmond last night about the time 3 city residents reported a bright ball of light hovering in the sky. James Blount and 2 women reported the UFO. Blount said he watched the object for a full 8 minutes through binoculars. The airport said the private aircraft, which shone on their scopes, was equipped with the latest in high-intensity arc lights. The plane headed north. So did the UFO the residents reported. A tower spokesman also said that similar reports of UFOs had been received by authorities in states to the north shortly after the plane with the new lighting system had flown past. Marion policeman Woody Darnell said his family watched a large white ball hovering above a mountain in the back of his home at Marion in Smith County in southwest Virginia. He said a large number of neighbors came out their back doors to watch the light. Then the light sped away. A group of residents and state forestry officials climbed the mountain to investigate. A police spokesman reported they found several treetops bent over and 1 tree, a green one, on fire where the UFO was seen. They found nothing else. In Prince George County, 8 adults reported they watched a UFO hovering in the night sky over the Southern Materials Company site. They said the object had red, yellow, and green lights. The objects hovered. The radar tower at Byrd Field said 2 military helicopters were in the area about the time the UFOs were reported. Most of the witnesses to the UFOs in Richmond and Prince George County last night said that when the objects finally moved, it was with a shower of sparks. In South Boston, Dr. George Wilkerson and another area resident reported that they had seen objects in the sky which, when they moved suddenly, left behind what appeared to be a shower of sparks. There was a rash of other UFO sightings in the state yesterday. Among them, a couple in Radford saw a large ball of white light that seemed to bounce up and down in the sky. The husband observed the objects through binoculars and reported, "There is a logical explanation, of course." Retorted the wife, "Give me one." For several days, there have been an increasing number of UFO reports in the state. 2 groups of tech students reported strange shapes in the skies with various light patterns near Salem. An inverted ice cream cone was reported near Williamsburg by 2 men in separate cars. The men told police that their car engines stopped when the object was in view, but started again when the object vanished. Other sightings have been reported in Charlottesville, Lynchburg, and in several South Virginian communities. There have also been reports of little men getting out of weird vehicles in parking lots, backyards, and front yards across the state. One man reported last night little men in the spacecraft that landed in his backyard didn't get out, but simply stared at him through their vehicle's window, then flew away. UFO sightings still mysterious. From the Northern Virginia Sun, January 27, 1965. Reports of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, continue to plague police officials and newsmen in various parts of Virginia Tuesday night, but no one in authority was able to get anything more than a laugh out of all the reports. Police went rushing to the intersection of Cleveland and Franklin Streets in Richmond about 9 p.m. after a report that a UFO had crashed there, but officers said not even one tree limb was found bent or disturbed, and they could find nothing. Newsmen in several cities said they had had many calls about UFOs as listeners expressed high interest in the reports, but most took the attitude expressed by one veteran reporter who commented that maybe the best part of the paper to carry the stories is on the comics page. At New Bern, Mrs. David Owens said she watched a revolving, disc-like device with 6 red and green flashing lights for a full minute as it settled to housetop level. She said she rushed inside to call others, but when she returned outside, the object was gone. A neighboring youth also said he saw the disc. At Radford, Steve Calloway and Billy Cobbs, both 13, said Tuesday they saw a revolving disc Monday night with green, blue, and red and white lights. Cecil Case and Walter Reagan of Pulaski, both employed at the Radford Arsenal, said Tuesday that one day about a month ago, they saw an object with 2 bright lights at 10 p.m., and the lights nearly blinded them. The reports were all added to others from the past several days by residents in widespread areas of the Old Dominion who maintain they saw strange objects in the sky. Richmond radar of the Federal Aviation Agency at Byrd Airfield said nothing unusual was spotted on radar scopes Tuesday, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA) unit at Wallops Island said there had been no firings in recent days, which might account for the recent sightings. Major Barrett Vermillion, information officer at Langley Air Force Base near Newport News, said Air Force investigators had been assigned to check on weekend reports of sightings at Williamsburg and Richmond, but the results of the investigations would have to be released in Washington. All information on UFOs is compiled at Air Force Headquarters under Project Blue Book, Vermillion explained. Meanwhile, a U.S. Forest Service fire control officer at Marion Tuesday explained away one of the UFOs as being a dead tree on fire, shooting sparks high into the air. A.M. Decker said that a squirrel hunter had tried to burn the tree down to get a squirrel hiding on it, and that when the tree fell over, a spectacular shower of fire and sparks prompted many reports of UFOs. Decker said a check with a Geiger counter showed that the only radioactivity near the tree was on his wristwatch. Other UFO sightings were explained away as caused by a private plane carrying a new light system of powerful arc lamps. Several radio stations capitalized on all the publicity surrounding the UFOs by starting contests Tuesdays for listeners to send in photographs or drawings of their sightings. Disc jockeys also had a field day in playing songs about the stars and moon, interspersing strange beeps and eerie sounds between records, and cracking old jokes about Martians, Venusians, and other extraterrestrial visitors dropping in on Virginians. But, as a little girl says, people do exaggerate. People have been seeing things in Virginia. From the Northern Virginia Sun, February 1st, 1965. Editor's note: little green men with large feet, strange lights, spacemen and flying saucers. Virginia had reports of them all during the week. The following gives a child's view of the UFO situation and was written for a 4th grade class. She is the 9-year-old daughter of UPI's Virginia State Manager, Alfred McCormick, Jr. I think there could be flying saucers with green, yellow people and blue men in them. The things one hears probably are exaggerated, but some things are true. And if there are flying saucers and green and blue men, I hope that they are friendly. When I see a flying saucer, if I do, I will then believe it. But I'll have my eyes checked. If there are green and blue men, they could have come from a different galaxy that is like ours. They would look funny and have funny-looking flying objects. I bet they are smarter than some of us. I've heard lots of people say I saw a flying saucer land in my backyard. People say that they saw green, purple, brown, yellow, and black men get out of the flying saucers. They have pointed ears and green faces and have no hair sometimes. They leave green, blue, purple, and yellow footprints on the ground too. A flying saucer is reported to have green, blue, and yellow lights around it, and one man said had a 100-foot flying saucer landed in his backyard with a funny-looking gun. The man was only 3 feet high, which is kind of small, and when the police got there was not much, nothing. One man said a green man turned his dog to blue, green, and yellow. Of course, people do exaggerate, I know that. I think there could be people from other planets, and I wish I could see one of those flying saucers if there are any. I bet those green, blue, yellow, and purple men look funny. That's what I think about UFOs. By Alfred McCormick, Jr. Shortly before Christmas, a gunsmith was driving down a Virginia highway when a dark, noiseless object landed down into a meadow, landed like a bubble, and knocked out the engine of his car. The report by Horace Burns of Grottos, made public 2 weeks ago, started a round of weird reports from various parts of the state which have plagued authorities and news media. In the Shenandoah Valley, Augusta County Sheriff John E. Kent said UFO reports in his area have gotten completely out of hand and are now dangerous. Several persons in the county armed themselves last Wednesday night and set out looking for creatures which supposedly landed there in UFOs. The sheriff, fed up with the reports and resulting publicity, said anyone can go out at night and see some sort of reflections. And even if the reported creatures were found from outer space, who has a right to mow them down? He said he doesn't believe in UFOs or strange little green outer space visitors, and warned that anyone in his Balwick carrying firearms without a good reason will be dealt with. What's more, Sheriff Kent said mothers have told him because of the UFO reports, their children have become frightened, don't understand it, and won't go to bed without the lights on. On January 23rd, 2 motorists saw a giant aluminum-colored object hovering just off the ground, stop the ignition systems of their cars near Williamsburg. After the object whizzed off, they were able to restart their vehicles, they said. The gunsmith's car also was returned to commission when the very large, dark, noiseless object departed. Then, last week in Southwest Virginia, a minister and members of his congregation said they saw a UFO. It stopped some 600 feet above the ground, right over downtown Marion. It had a round-shaped bottom from which several lights showed, said the Reverend H. Preston Robinson. At Stoughton, a teenager said he and some friends saw 3 little spacemen last Tuesday night. The little creatures dashed across a field and were able to elude the less fleet-footed band of students, making it safely back to their UFO and leaving Earth, police were told. Several law enforcement officers and government officials have said some unprintable things about the rash of reports. One police chief, finding some of his off-duty men aiding in a search for spacemen, said he was taking appropriate steps to bring the reserve officers back into line. Here are some explanations offered by persons in authority on the reports. Some practical jokers are going around the Shenandoah Valley at night in frogmen's outfits. The valley is about 200 miles from the ocean. A squirrel hunter tried to burn down a tree to get a squirrel out. The tree toppled over in a spectacular shower of fire and sparks, which prompted a UFO report. A private plane with a new system of powerful arc lamps passed over Virginia the other night. Military helicopters with powerful lights passing close to the ground were mistaken for UFOs. Weather balloons, especially the brightly colored ones, could have caused UFO reports. Investigators offer no explanation for UFOs. From the Farmville Herald, July 29, 1966. A team from Fort Lee was in Farmville Wednesday to investigate reports of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, being seen in this area. Robert L. Bates, Prince Edward Deputy Sheriff, said the Fort Lee team had no radar contacts that would substantiate helicopters or other aircraft in the area. Clinton Childress, a special deputy sheriff, reported seeing and observing for about an hour a UFO Saturday night in the Darlington Heights area. Fred D. Reed of Gray Street in Farmville also reported seeing a UFO Tuesday morning at about 4 a.m. Other reports throughout the state have stirred considerable interest in UFOs. A delivery man for a Richmond dairy reported to police early Wednesday morning that he sighted a UFO in the Mannequin area of Goochland County. He described the object as moving from the southwest to northwest, traveling at about twice treetop level. The object had a large spotlight pointed at the ground, lighting an area 30 to 35 yards wide. It made a whistling noise, the man said. He reported watching it for about 2 minutes. It was reported earlier that a Richmond patrolman spotted a Zeppelin-shaped object about 300 feet in the air near the state fairgrounds early on the morning of June 24th and chased the object well into Hanover County. Meanwhile, the Associated Press reported Wednesday that policemen in High Point, North Carolina, reported seeing 2 strange lights in the sky, and a similar report came from Asheboro and Ramseur, North Carolina. An official of the Federal Aviation Agency in Atlanta, Georgia, reported seeing several strange objects early Tuesday in that area of the nation. New UFO. Great speed, no sound. From the Farmville Herald, August 16, 1966. A report of an unidentified flying object Thursday night in the Farmville area drew police officers to the Johnston Brothers farm north of Farmville in Cumberland County. Mrs. Jessie Morgan and several of her children who live on the Johnston farm spotted the UFO between 8:30 and 9 p.m., hovering over the dairy barn near the Morgan home. They placed a call to the Farmville police, who summoned Henry Blatton, Cumberland deputy, to the scene shortly after 9 p.m. The object had disappeared before the arrival of the police officers, however. Mrs. Morgan described the UFO as having 4 red lights about the size of breakfast plates, blinking on and off, and 2 smaller white lights that didn't blink. The object hovered over the barn from 5 to 10 minutes, Mrs. Morgan told Deputy Blatton, before moving west at a tremendous rate of speed without any noticeable sound. It was rather large, she continued, but I couldn't determine the size, although the lights were very plain and seemed to be a long distance apart. This UFO sighting follows the report of several sightings of UFOs throughout the state, one which was observed for about an hour by Prince Edward County Deputy Sheriff Clinton Childress on the night of July 23rd in the Darlington Heights area of Prince Edward County. Several people reported hearing the UFO, which was spotted by Childress, but other reports have been received on the spotting in Cumberland Thursday night. Unidentified flying object seen Saturday night in the county. From the Farmville Herald, July 26, 1966. An unidentified flying object was reported seen in the Darlington Heights area of Prince Edward County Saturday night. Clinton Childress, a special deputy sheriff, observed the UFO for about an hour. Childress, who was working on an assignment near Darlington Heights, spotted the object at 5 minutes to 1 Saturday night. It was hovering in the vicinity of the Calhoun and Route farms. He tried to determine the shape of the UFO, which he described as dome-shaped and about 170 feet long. It had bright lights on when Childress saw it. The lights were white. On the underside, the lights had a greenish tint, and over the top, a reddish tint. The UFO just floated around in the sky, Childress said. The lights went from bright to dim and disappeared completely for as long as a minute before coming back on. It is difficult to estimate how high it was, Childress commented, but I would say about 500 feet from the ground. The UFO stayed in the same spot until 1:20 a.m. At that time, it blacked out and soon reappeared over toward Appomattox. It was dark while it was moving, Childress said, and it apparently moved at a tremendous rate of speed. He watched it until 10 minutes to 2 as it hovered in the sky toward Appomattox, and then Childress returned home. While he was observing the UFO, he detected no noise. However, Mrs. Roscoe Rout reported that she heard a noise like a helicopter that woke her up after 2 a.m. Mrs. Allen Calhoun said the noise awakened her also. She said it sounded like a group of helicopters, with their rotating blades making a droning noise. She did not verify the time. Childress stopped a car that was driving by while he was observing the UFO, and the men in the car took a look at the object, verifying that they saw it, before they jumped back in the car and took off. The night was clear, no wind blowing, and the moon had gone down when Childress saw the object. Childress called Camp Pickett and reported this information to the sergeant of the military police, with whom he was acquainted. A team from Camp Pickett came up Sunday to investigate the incident. They said it definitely was not a helicopter and could offer no explanation of the phenomena. They indicated they will investigate further, checking with radar controls, etc. In the past, radar has not been successful in tracking UFOs. Childress said the military officials requested that any further reports of UFOs be reported immediately to Camp Pickett, and they will dispatch search planes to try and find out what it is. Another UFO spotted in Farmville area. From the Farmville Herald, April 28, 1967. It looked about the size of a building or an extra large airplane, is the way Clayton Fallon of Rice described a UFO, unidentified flying object, he spotted Monday night. The UFO was in no hurry to get away, and Fallon called his neighbors as well as town and county police to verify what he and his family were seeing. They watched it for about an hour, 9:15 to 10:10 p.m., and the lighted object then disappeared from sight over the horizon. Fallon can see the light on top of radio station WFLO from his home, and said the UFO was about the same height from the horizon. Its color was mostly white, but it had a bluish cast. The wind was blowing from the object to my house, Fallon said, and I could not hear any noise. The local sighting renews interest in the mysterious UFOs which have been spotted in this area from time to time. Some of these objects have been identified, but for the most part, they have remained unidentified. One of the most positive cases of a UFO was reported in South Hill last Friday night. C.N. Crowder, manager of Mobile Chemical Company warehouse, saw the UFO on the ground about 9 p.m. as he was en route home from work. The UFO blasted off in front of his eyes, leaving burn marks in the road. It was just a flash, and it was gone, but when I had my bright lights on, I got a perfect look at it, Crowder is quoted as saying. He described the object as having the appearance of a metal storage tank about 12 feet in diameter and some 15 to 20 feet high. He added the object was on legs about 3.5 feet high. UFOs were also sighted in abundance Saturday night throughout this area, with yellow balls of light flying through the sky. Investigation shows, however, that these were flares fired at Camp Pickett for a military exercise. UFO seen near Rockville. From the Herald-Progress, May 22, 1969. The spotting of unusual lights and 3 humanoid creatures in the Rockville area are being investigated by national UFO experts, according to a report from Ray E. Ricketts of Richmond UFO Research Organization. According to Ricketts, 3 unannounced visitors were seen in the Rockville area on Saturday, May 10th by Michael Luskovich, 20-year-old accounting student at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. Luskovich was returning to his home in Mannequin shortly after midnight after visiting Janet Stansbury in Rockville. Turning off State Route 271 at Rockville Grocery onto State Road 622 on the way to Mannequin, after traveling about 50 yards on this road, Mike caught a glimpse of 2 objects standing in the road. At first he thought the objects were 2 deer, but as the car light struck them, Mike was startled to see 2 small men, about 3½ to 4 feet tall, with what he described as either outlandish heads or large helmets. According to reports, the 2 men bolted to the left of the road, scrambled up a vine-covered bank, and disappeared into a field of barley. Just before the 2 little men disappeared, a third one, who had apparently been standing along the road on the right side, came running across the road to join his companions. The third man was described as identical to the first 2. Mike was able to clearly observe him as the headlights completely illuminated the running figure. At this time, Mike was almost in front of the home of Dr. Waldrop. The little men were at a point just beyond the Waldrop home. Mike said the men were dressed in brown clothing, about the color of a hunting jacket, with baggy pants to the ankle where they either fitted snugly or were tucked inside some kind of boots. He was unable to describe any kind of shoes or boots. In a written report from Ricketts, the humanoids were described as having either an oversized helmet or head, which was perfectly round with a band around the edge. The band reflected the car lights like the eyes of an animal. Mike described the color as pale green. Mike could see no face or facial features inside the round object and could not determine whether the man was looking directly at him, which would have meant that the band was on the front, or if he was looking straight ahead toward the barley field. He described the size of the helmet or head as about the size of a basketball and said that the baggy pants of the men resembled sweatpants. On Monday afternoon, after telling Mr. and Mrs. R.A. Stansbury and others in the neighborhood about the incident, Mike led a group of people to the position where the men had crossed the road. The group included D.R. Waldrop Jr., Billy Smith, and UFO investigator Ricketts. Ricketts said that they found a path into the grain field where someone had gone through, and 3 places just inside the grain field where it appeared 3 somethings had dived headlong into the grain and lay there. Impressions indicated persons of small stature, Ricketts said. Other phenomena were also reported during the same period, according to Ricketts. Debbie Payne, 18, reported seeing a strange light just above a large oak tree near her home in the immediate neighborhood where Mike had his encounter. The light glowed brighter and brighter and then flicked out. On Sunday night, May 4th, just after a loud clap of thunder, an unusual sound was heard by people from an area of Richmond's West End to Rockville. At Rockville, Mr. and Mrs. Herbert C. Clayton and their son reportedly watched a glowing object about 1/2 mile from their home for more than an hour during the storm. The light was described as about the size of an automobile and glowing with a yellow tinge, growing brighter and diminishing in intensity. On Friday, May 9th, 2 Rockville men reported seeing a shooting star in the area. According to Ricketts, all these incidents may be interrelated. It is possible that some kind of craft was observing the thunderstorm or entered the atmosphere at a point where the thunderstorm was in progress. A bolt of lightning could have possibly damaged the craft, knocking some part of it. This could have been the source of the explosions and account for the light that was seen by the Claytons. The little men seen in the road by Mike were heading in the direction of the Clayton sighting. They were certainly looking for something. They could have been from the disabled craft or from a sister ship. At any rate, they did not seem to possess an abundant supply of smarts as they ran in the wrong direction. Therefore, we could assume they were not pilots, but search teams or a cleanup detail. It is very obvious that they did not want to be seen. The sighting of the men, fitting Mike's general description, is not unusual, as similar sightings have been made in the past few years all over the world. However, it is a first for the Richmond area, Ricketts added. Asked why Rockville might be an area for UFO sightings, Ricketts said that the high mineral content of the area, buried telephone cable, microwaves, pipeline, and I-64 all contribute, since all visitors seem to use underground cables for navigational purposes. The Rockville area will be investigated on Saturday by 2 representatives from the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena of Washington, D.C. Stuart Nixon, a fieldman from the committee, visited the site of the Luskovich incident on Tuesday of this week and took pictures of the area. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with everything I post. Don't forget to leave a comment, as I always love getting to talk to you all and like hearing your stories and feedback. If you have your own spooky story, UFO encounter, cryptid sighting, or any other kind of scary story, you can either share it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/IHaveASpookyStory, or send it to my story submission email, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. See you next time. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the shadows bite.